Do you remember Mrs. Brown's Boys, 2011? For us, it felt chaotic, loud, and harmless. But what happened when the cameras stopped rolling was anything but funny. Illness, addiction, broken marriages, public feuds, and silent breakdowns followed the cast into real life. This is the story you were never meant to see. Brendan O'Carroll as Agnes Brown. Agnes Brown, the sharp-tongued matriarch in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was portrayed by Brendan O'Carroll. At 55 years old, he embodied the emotional engine of the series, the voice that drove its humor, conflict, and identity. The role did not introduce him to comedy. It exposed what survival sounded like when spoken out loud. However, it was built on years that almost broke him. Born September 17, 1955 in Finglas, Dublin, O'Carroll was the youngest of 11 children in a home reshaped by early loss. His father died when Brendan was 7, leaving his mother Maureen to raise the family with little money and relentless pressure. School ended at 12, not by choice but necessity, and work replaced childhood. That crowded, grieving house taught him toughness, and the reflex to joke before pain could speak first. Adulthood did not reward him quickly. A serious attempt to move beyond comedy, the boxing drama Sparrow's Trap, collapsed during production, leaving him buried under over £1 million in debt and legally bankrupt. He later described days spent sitting in darkness, unable to move, ashamed to answer the phone. Agnes Brown returned to him in that silence, drawn from memories of his mother's authority and warmth, and the character became a rope thrown back to the surface. Private life carried its own fractures. His first marriage to Doreen Dowdall ended under financial strain and grief after the loss of their first child, a wound that never fully closed. Dyslexia shadowed his working life, shaping how he wrote and memorized, even as Mrs. Brown's Boys the movie turned him into an unlikely global figure and earned him the IFTA Lifetime Achievement Award. Today, Brendan O'Carroll is 71 years old. He remains active, writing, touring, and performing, while managing health scares that forced him to slow down and rethink how long the body can keep pace with the character. His estimated net worth of around $20 million reflects not instant success, but a late reward for endurance. Jennifer Gibney as Kathy Brown. Kathy Brown, the anxious, emotionally exposed daughter in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was played by Jennifer Gibney. At 46 years old, she became the emotional counterweight of the show, the character through whom panic, vulnerability, and quiet suffering were expressed. The role demanded openness, and it gave the audience more truth than comfort. For her, visibility came with judgment attached. Born July 7, 1964 in Dublin, Ireland, Gibney grew up in a conventional Irish household and chose stability long before art. She spent years as a civil servant in the Irish tax office and later at the Bank of Ireland, studying drama quietly while holding a full-time job. Choosing acting meant abandoning security in midlife. Her career moved carefully, small film roles, stage work, persistence, until Mrs. Brown's Boys made her face recognizable overnight. The exposure turned cruel with the 2014 film adaptation, when reviews singled her out as weak, comments that left her shaken and publicly humiliated. Even a stint on Strictly Come Dancing ended early, not from lack of effort but the weight of pressure. Success arrived, but it arrived loud. Marriage intensified the strain. Wed to Brendan O'Carroll since 2005, she entered a family already marked by loss and divorce, spending years quietly unwelcome in some rooms. Later, severe menopausal symptoms, fatigue, anxiety, rapid weight gain, forced medical intervention just to keep working. Through it all, she continued performing, appearing in projects like All Round to Mrs. Brown's, while absorbing criticism meant for the character she played. Now, Jennifer Gibney is 62 years old. She continues to work alongside her husband, choosing stability over reinvention and protecting her health with the same discipline she once gave to a government desk job. Her estimated net worth of about $4.5 million, largely shared through joint projects, was earned slowly and publicly. Eilish O'Carroll as Winnie McGugan. Winnie McGugan, the loyal best friend and neighbor in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was portrayed by Eilish O'Carroll. At 59 years old, she became the emotional mirror of Agnes Brown, the softer presence that steadied the chaos and absorbed the fallout. Behind that warmth stood a life far more fractured than the character ever revealed. Born November 5, 1952, in Dublin, Ireland, Eilish O'Carroll was the second child in a family of 10, raised under the weight of politics, Catholic expectations, and constant financial strain. Her mother's public role contrasted sharply with the private instability at home, and from a young age, Eilish turned to amateur theater as refuge. Money was scarce, attention was divided, and being heard meant performing louder than the room. Her adult life became a long exercise in endurance. She remained trapped in an unhappy marriage for 32 years, suppressing her identity in a conservative Ireland that left little space for deviation. In her 40s, falling in love with a woman shattered the structure she had built to survive. By 2005, the collision of faith, shame, and secrecy pushed her into severe depression and near suicide. Pain, she later admitted, she did not expect to survive. Career success did not shield her from scrutiny. While Mrs. Brown's Boys and Mrs. Brown's Boys the movie brought recognition, tabloids fixated on her sexuality and her relationship with her brother Brendan, framing her truth as controversy. Her one-woman show, Live, Love, Laugh, drew acclaim, but her 2018 memoir triggered accusations of exposing family wounds. Health battles followed: osteoporosis, menopausal complications, and the financial collapse of her theater company during the pandemic. Today, Eilish O'Carroll is 74 years old. She continues treatment for an undisclosed illness, described by her brother as the hard bit, while remaining active in advocacy and selective performance. Her estimated net worth of about $2.4 million reflects decades of work, not comfort. Dermot O'Neill as Grandad Brown. Grandad Brown, the sharp-eyed, quietly defiant patriarch in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was played by Dermot O'Neill. At 53 years old, he brought gravity and restraint to a world built on noise, grounding the family with silence rather than jokes. That stillness came from a life lived mostly off-stage. Born June 6, 1958, in Dublin, Ireland, Dermot O'Neill grew up rooted in the city's working rhythm, forming a friendship with Brendan O'Carroll that would span more than 4 decades. His early years remain largely undocumented, not from ease but from habit. He learned early to stay out of the spotlight. Before acting, he cleaned windows for a living, never imagining that routine would place him inside a television family. The transition was abrupt. Stage work and touring schedules were relentless, pushing him into exhaustion as the show's popularity exploded. While others chased momentum, O'Neill absorbed the physical toll quietly, appearing in Mrs. Brown's Boys specials and Mrs. Brown's Boys the movie without courting fame. His reliability became his currency, even as the pace demanded more than he admitted. In 2020, his body forced a reckoning. A mild stroke temporarily robbed him of speech for 3 months, an especially cruel blow for a performer whose power lay in timing and pause. Rehabilitation was slow and humbling, carried out away from cameras, supported by family and longtime friends. By 2026, Dermot O'Neill is 68 years old. He continues to appear selectively, prioritizing health over exposure, living quietly in Dublin after reclaiming his voice. His estimated net worth of around $1.9 million reflects longevity rather than spectacle. Paddy Houlihan as Dermot Brown. Dermot Brown, the anxious, often overwhelmed son in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was played by Paddy Houlihan. At 38 years old, he became the character who carried the pressure of responsibility, the one who absorbed stress so others could explode. Dermot wasn't the loudest voice in the room. He was the one cracking under it. Born June 9th, 1973 in Dublin, Ireland, Paddy Houlihan grew up grounded in the city's theater scene, learning discipline early through stage work rather than television shortcuts. His formative years were practical, not privileged, and performance was earned through repetition and stamina. The stage taught him control, but it also trained him to ignore fatigue for too long. That habit followed him into success. As Mrs. Brown's Boys expanded into relentless touring and spin-offs like Mrs. Brown's Boys the movie, the schedule tightened around his health. Long runs, travel, and the expectation to be consistently on created a quiet strain that rarely made headlines. Family life became the counterweight. Married to Emily Regan in 2013, Paddy built a private refuge away from the cameras, welcoming twin daughters in 2015. But in 2021, COVID-19 shattered that balance. He spent 12 days in ICU, survived, and emerged with 40% permanent lung damage, a loss that redefined breath, stamina, and the future he had assumed was guaranteed. Today, Paddy Houlihan is 53 years old. He continues to perform selectively while managing long-term post-COVID complications, prioritizing health and family over pace. His estimated net worth of around $2.9 million reflects years of touring and screen work, but survival, not wealth, became the real turning point. Fiona O'Carroll as Maria Brown. Maria Brown, the sharp-witted, emotionally guarded daughter in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was portrayed by Fiona O'Carroll. At 31 years old, she embodied the tension between loyalty and resentment that runs through the family. And the line between role and reality was thinner than it appeared. Born October 14, 1980 in Dublin, Ireland, Fiona grew up inside a complicated household shaped by fame and fracture. Her parents' divorce in 1999 left long-lasting emotional damage, forcing her to mature quickly while living under a public surname. Stability was fragile, and family love often arrived tangled with expectation. Her career stayed close to home. Cast from the beginning of Mrs. Brown's Boys, she carried both opportunity and pressure, later appearing in projects like Ultimate Hell Week and earning awards for dramatic short films. Success, however, intensified internal politics and workload stress, leaving little space to step away without consequence. Being family on set meant there was nowhere to hide. Marriage deepened the strain. Wed to co-star Martin Delaney in 2006, Fiona raised 4 children, 3 with autism, while balancing filming and touring. Exhaustion accumulated quietly. The marriage collapsed in 2022, followed by depression, a 20-kilogram weight gain, and a public unraveling she never planned to share. Strength became survival rather than image. Now, Fiona O'Carroll is 46 years old. She continues acting and advocacy work, reshaping her life after divorce while prioritizing her children's needs. Her estimated net worth of around $3.1 million, drawn from acting and divorce settlements, does not soften the cost. Amanda Woods as Betty Brown. Betty Brown, the sharp-tongued, emotionally guarded daughter-in-law in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was portrayed by Amanda Woods. At 36 years old, she represented the quiet friction inside the Brown household, the character who absorbed judgment without ever fully belonging. That tension reflected a life already stretched thin before the cameras arrived. Born 9th of March 1975 in Letterkenny, County Donegal, Ireland, Amanda Woods grew up closely tied to family and local community, far from television studios. Motherhood arrived early, long before career stability, forcing her to balance responsibility with ambition from her early 20s. The emotional pull between Donegal and the demands of touring never fully loosened, and home was often something she had to leave in order to provide for it. Her career developed steadily through stage work, eventually anchoring her inside Mrs. Brown's Boys, where consistency mattered more than spotlight. Tours were physically exhausting, schedules unforgiving, and the pressure of working inside a family-run production added layers of emotional complexity. Projects like Mrs. Brown's Boys to Movie and live tours brought visibility, but also fatigue that accumulated quietly. Marriage blurred professional and personal boundaries. Wednesday to Danny O'Carroll, she raised 2 sons while sharing both stage and surname with her husband. Over time, strain replaced rhythm. Their separation, though amicable, marked the end of a long attempt to keep family and career aligned. In 2022, a serious car accident left her with 3 broken ribs, followed by months of painful recovery that forced her to slow down for the first time. Today, Amanda Woods is 51 years old. She continues acting selectively, prioritizing health and her children over relentless touring. Her estimated net worth of around $1.1 million reflects stability rather than excess. Danny O'Carroll as Buster Brady. Buster Brady, the loyal yet reckless companion in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was played by Danny O'Carroll. At 28 years old, he embodied youthful chaos, impulsiveness, and misplaced confidence within the Brown universe. Buster laughed loudly, stumbled often, and never quite learned from consequence. Off-screen, the distance between character and reality proved uncomfortably small. Born 16th October 1983 in Dublin, Ireland, Danny O'Carroll grew up inside a family where fame and fracture coexisted. His parents' divorce shaped his adolescence, while the weight of a famous surname followed him everywhere. Diagnosed with dyslexia as a teenager, like his father and brother, he learned early that effort did not always guarantee control. Success came fast. Mrs. Brown's Boys opened doors to film work, producing credits and projects like Mrs. Brown's Boys to Movie. But pressure followed opportunity. In 2019, a gambling addiction spiraled out of control, costing him €180,000, forcing the sale of his home and triggering deep personal collapse. Financial rescue came from his father, followed by a painful period of enforced distance to prevent relapse. Family life suffered. Married to Amanda Woods since 2007, Danny became a father to 2 sons while juggling touring, expectations, and secrecy. The addiction fractured trust, and by 2024, the marriage ended in separation. Public confirmation came quietly, without statements, without blame, just absence. Recovery was slow, deliberate, and humbling. Today, Danny O'Carroll is 43 years old. He has rebuilt stability through radio hosting, television appearances, and renewed discipline, including work on Dancing with the Stars, Ireland and Highland Radio. His estimated net worth of around $2.1 million reflects recovery rather than peak success. Rory Cowan as Rory Brown. Rory Brown, the flamboyant, sharp-tongued son in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was portrayed by Rory Cowan. At 52 years old, he became the character that shattered masculine expectations inside the Brown household, turning discomfort into laughter and visibility into tension. Rory Brown wasn't created to blend in. He existed to provoke. Born July 15, 1959 in Dublin, Ireland, Rory Cowan grew up in a politically charged family shaped by activism, unions, and Irish nationalism. His parents were trade union organizers, and his grandfather was a revolutionary figure tied to Ireland's War of Independence, leaving Cowan raised in homes where ideology mattered more than comfort. Stability was fragmented as the family moved between Dublin, Athlone, and Limerick, and performance became a way to survive rooms filled with strong opinions. Before acting, Cowan lived behind the scenes. He worked in music retail and marketing, eventually managing bands and artists, including crossing paths with Brendan O'Carroll long before fame. When Mrs. Brown's Boys took shape, Cowan wasn't meant to act at all. He handled logistics. But when another performer quit at the last moment, Cowan stepped in, never having performed live before. His exaggerated, unapologetically queer portrayal became iconic, later extending to Mrs. Brown's Boys the movie and cementing his public identity. That identity came at a cost. After 26 years working within O'Carroll's company, Cowan walked away in 2017, later describing the environment as exploitative and himself as treated like a slave. His memoir became a bestseller, but it also triggered industry backlash and quiet blacklisting. During the pandemic, he fell into clinical depression lasting 18 months, compounded by a failed restaurant venture that pushed him close to bankruptcy. Public homophobic abuse followed, forcing police involvement. Now, Rory Cowan is 67 years old. He continues acting selectively, most notably in Fair City, while remaining outspoken and politically active. His estimated net worth of around $1.8 million is significantly reduced from his peak years. Gary Hollywood as Dino Doyle. Dino Doyle, the brash, swaggering Scotsman in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was played by Gary Hollywood. At 32 years old, he injected raw physicality and working-class aggression into the show's rhythm. Dino didn't soften scenes, he collided with them. That same collision would later explode off-screen. Born September 2, 1979 in Glasgow, Scotland, Gary Hollywood entered acting young, landing television roles as a child, and growing up on sets instead of playgrounds. Drama school came early, pressure came earlier, and adulthood arrived without pause. Performance wasn't aspiration, it was routine, and exhaustion hid inside professionalism. His career expanded across British television and film, including Take the High Road and feature films alongside Emma Thompson and Brian Cox. Touring with Mrs. Brown's Boys brought visibility, but also resentment. By 2020, Hollywood alleged he was being paid 50% less than colleagues for identical work. The dispute turned legal, public, and brutal. He ultimately secured a seven-figure settlement, but at devastating cost. His character was written out, and doors across the industry closed. The fallout nearly destroyed his personal life. Stress from the lawsuit pushed his marriage to the brink, coinciding with his wife's miscarriage in 2023. In 2021, Hollywood was hospitalized for severe anxiety and panic disorder, unable to breathe, sleep, or function normally. Victory in court did not bring peace. It brought isolation. Today, Gary Hollywood is 47 years old. He works sporadically in theater and regional productions, far from the spotlight he once held. His estimated net worth of approximately $650,000, down nearly 80% from his peak, reflects survival rather than success. Susie Blake as Hilary Nicholson. Hilary Nicholson, the brittle, class-obsessed neighbor in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was portrayed by Susie Blake. At 61 years old, she gave the show its sharpest edge of social cruelty, the character audiences loved to hate because she felt uncomfortably real. Hilary didn't chase laughs. She delivered judgment. And that icy precision came from a lifetime spent surviving the industry rather than being embraced by it. Born April 19, 1950 in Highgate, London, Susie Blake entered the world already surrounded by theater royalty. She was raised inside a celebrated acting dynasty related to Vivien Leigh, John Mills, and Annette Mills, where talent was assumed and comparison was constant. Privilege did not protect her from pressure. It intensified it. Growing up in London's artistic elite meant success was expected, not applauded. Her career stretched across decades. Victoria Wood, as seen on TV, Coronation Street, West End productions like Wicked. Yet Ireland proved an uneasy chapter. Joining Mrs. Brown's Boys meant stepping into a different comedic culture, harsher and more polarizing. Criticism came quickly, and for the first time in years, Blake found herself questioning whether longevity still had value. Then illness arrived. In 2018, she was diagnosed with stage 2 throat cancer, enduring 35 rounds of radiotherapy and losing her voice for 8 months, an actor silenced in the cruelest way. Recovery was incomplete before grief struck again. Her mother died in 2020 during the pandemic, leaving Blake isolated and emotionally unmoored. Lockdown stripped away routine, performance, and companionship, plunging her into deep depression. Work continued, select theater roles, touring murder mysteries, but solitude followed her off stage, louder than applause. Today, Susie Blake is 76 years old. She continues acting selectively, protecting her voice and health after surviving cancer. Her estimated net worth of around $4.2 million reflects a long, diverse career, but not an easy one. Hillary Nicholson sneered from the sidelines. Susie Blake endured quietly, long after the laughter faded. Fiona Gibney as Sharon McGugan. Sharon McGugan, the nervous, overlooked daughter in Mrs. Brown's Boys, was played by Fiona Gibney. At 38 years old, she embodied invisibility, the character who lingered on the edge of scenes without ever fully stepping inside them. Sharon existed to be ignored. Off-screen, that truth cut deeper than anyone realized. Born 12 October 1973 in Dublin, Ireland, Fiona Gibney grew up in the shadow of family success. As the sister of Jennifer Gibney and sister-in-law of Brendan O'Carroll, opportunity was always nearby, but never guaranteed. Dublin was small, the industry smaller, and comparison followed her into every room. Being related opened doors. Staying in the room was another battle entirely. Her career became tightly bound to the Mrs. Brown's Boys universe. While the franchise thrived, Fiona struggled to secure roles beyond it, quietly sidelined as attention focused on the core cast. Projects like Mrs. Brown's Boys The Movie and All Round to Mrs. Brown's kept her visible, but not elevated. Over time, being part of the family became a ceiling rather than a ladder. Personal life unraveled without spectacle. A marriage ended in 2021, followed by the devastating loss of child custody, a rupture that stripped away stability and self-worth. Confidence eroded, auditions dried up, and Fiona withdrew from the spotlight, turning instead to part-time teaching, passing on skills she rarely had the chance to fully use herself. Now, Fiona Gibney is 53 years old. She continues working quietly, teaching acting while appearing occasionally on stage and screen. Her estimated net worth of about $900,000 reflects perseverance rather than reward. Sharon McGugan stood unnoticed beside louder characters. Fiona Gibney learned how it feels when life does the same. Jamie O'Carroll as Bono Brown. Bono Brown, the wide-eyed child at the heart of Mrs. Brown's Boys, was portrayed by Jamie O'Carroll. At 5 years old, he became the quiet, emotional anchor of the family, the innocence everyone else revolved around. And carrying that warmth so young came with a weight few adults ever notice. Born 25 July 2006 in Dublin, Ireland, Jamie grew up inside a showbiz household. As the grandson of Brendan O'Carroll and son of Danny O'Carroll and Amanda Woods, he was never far from a stage. Childhood unfolded between takes and tours, where playtime shared space with schedules and expectations, and being natural was quietly demanded. Fame arrived before choice. While Mrs. Brown's Boys and Mrs. Brown's Boys The Movie gave him visibility, they also fixed an image of him that grew faster than he did. School came with whispers, and family success became a comparison he never asked for. Unlike others, Jamie avoided early rebellion. He stepped back, focusing on education and normalcy, choosing classrooms over red carpets. That decision, though healthy, came with distance from an identity the public assumed he would inherit. Growing up meant renegotiating a role written for a boy who no longer existed. Today, Jamie O'Carroll is 20 years old. He remains largely out of the spotlight, prioritizing studies while keeping acting as a possibility rather than a promise. His estimated net worth of around $500,000 reflects early work rather than adult ambition. Damien McKiernan as Rory Brown. Rory Brown, The flamboyant, outspoken son in Mrs. Brown's Boys was later portrayed by Damian McKiernan. At 34 years old, he stepped into a role already loaded with expectation and hostility. He didn't inherit a character, he inherited a war zone. Every gesture was measured against a ghost. Born 24th April 1983. In Dublin, Ireland, Damian McKiernan grew up outside the original inner circle, training independently and building his craft without the safety net of a famous surname. Dublin's theater scene shaped him through repetition and rejection, teaching resilience long before television ever noticed. He learned early that visibility could be as dangerous as obscurity. Replacing a beloved predecessor shattered anonymity overnight. As the new Rory, Damian became a target of 5 years of cyberbullying, mocked, harassed, and blamed for a change he did not create. Abuse followed him across social media, draining confidence and pushing him close to quitting acting entirely. Silence became his defense, even as criticism grew louder. Work narrowed. While he continued performing and developed independent projects like Broken-Hearted Boys, the emotional toll lingered. Writing and directing became refuge, a way to regain control when performance felt like exposure. Survival, not ambition, defined this chapter of his career. Today, Damian McKiernan is 43 years old. He continues working behind the scenes as a writer and director, choosing projects carefully after years of public pressure. His estimated net worth of around $700,000 reflects persistence rather than reward. Time has changed their faces, but it also revealed the scars we never saw. From early fame to illness, heartbreak, and quiet survival, the cast of Mrs. Brown's Boys has lived far more turbulent lives than the laughter suggested. Which story shocked you the most, and whose journey deserved a different ending? If you want more deep dives like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next Then and Now uncovering.